This is Dr. Robert Leviton, physician informatician, and we're going to be talking in this chapter on the clinical application of worksheets focusing on formulas and functions. Formulas are really simple methods for providing you with the tools to make calculations, obtaining values for data in multiple cells, rows, or columns in a spreadsheet. Functions are predefined formulas available in Excel. We're going to be looking at the sum values and creating formulas. We're looking at averages in our diabetes follow-up worksheet. We'll be calculating if functions which provide true and false values and nested if functions that allow us to have more than two outcomes, multiple outcomes. Now quickly, the references that we're providing you here are both in the electronic version as well as the print version. The first is a link to the function categories available with popular functions, compatibility functions. It's a really valuable asset. And over here in the second reference, you can download Getting Started with Functions and Formulas by opening up and reviewing this impressive spreadsheet that gets into the basics, introduction to functions, and so forth. Very valuable for you to review these after this course. Let's begin with our first lesson on the difference between formulas and functions. So here we have a list of length of stays, and we want to know what is the total length of stay for these 6 patients by clicking in our total column and beginning the formula with the equal sign and an open parentheses. You can see we're starting the formula up here, and we're just going to come and add B49 plus, highlight the next cell, plus, and we're just going to continue that until we complete the 6 items. And you can see simply highlighting it, it's giving you the string of our formula. We're going to close the parenthesis, add enter, and the first thing you notice is that Excel is identifying that there's a problem with the formula, and you can see here we added an extra plus sign when it was not necessary. We're just going to backspace that out. Here you can see the sum formula, close parentheses, it's repeated down here in the cell. Hitting enter gives you that sum for those days. Well, when we use a function, it's much simpler. We're going to simply come over here, equal. We're going to type in the function name, which is sum, open parentheses. We're going to highlight the cells that are in the range for the sum, close parentheses, and you can see the function formula here. And now we're simply going to click enter, and we've completed that formula. Very simply done. Let's take a look at our diabetes follow-up worksheet, and we're going to look at the average age for our patients in our population. And so we know that if we come down here and scroll to the bottom, you can see now in our status bar the average age is 46.774 and the count is 390. If we come over to this cell here, and we're going to simply add up that column, come down to the bottom, and now we're going to come over here to the editing group of the Home tab in the ribbon, and we're going to click on Autosum, and what this is going to do is automatically sum up the total in that cell range. So you can see that the total here is 18,242. Now if we come down to this cell, we know that the average is the total divided by the count, so we're going to go parentheses. We're going to click on that total cell. Notice how the cell mode has changed to point. We'll put in the division sign. We'll go 390 and close parentheses, and there you can see our average is calculated. Let's just type in average next to that. Now, if we look at our hemoglobin A1C column, again, we have 390 elements, right? And we want to get the average of that. And you saw the complexity, not really elegant, getting the average for the age. Let's first come to the status bar, change the status to include the sum. And now, when we come back up to the hemoglobin A1C, you can see as we pull down that range, over here in the status bar, we get the average of 5.589, the count is 390, and the sum is 2180. So that avoids our having to actually come over and using the auto sum function. Let's just type average here. And then over here, we're going to begin with the function. So we'll click equal, parentheses, equal, average. And notice how we're beginning to identify the formula that we want to use. And now we're going to highlight our cells. So we just come to the top, come all the way back down, And you can see we've got equal average D2 to 391, close parentheses, and we get the average. And notice how that's done for you. Much simpler than using a formula. There are wide ranges of functions that we'll be looking at as we move forward in this course. Simply by coming up to the function formula here, you can see that formula right here in the help box, and it gives you the answers as well. Let's go back to our if functions. If functions are very interesting in that they help us identify logical comparisons between values and what is expected of the value, resulting in either a true or false statement. So in this function, we have in the if function demonstration, we have a problem list of diagnoses: diabetes, hypertension, obesity, COPD, and gout. And we want to use the if function to identify those patients who have diabetes. And so we begin with the if function, equal if, and then we come over here to diabetes. So the function reads equal if the item in B65, diabetes, is present, then yes. If diabetes is not present, then no. So here you can see the equation: B65 equals diabetes, yes. If B65 does not contain diabetes, equals no. And let's just use Control C and Control V, and you can see what happens to hypertension. So again, in B66, is it diabetes? Yes. If not diabetes, no. It's labeled no. And if functions, now we can simply grab the autofill handle, come all the way down, and we've completed that string of yes and no answers quite nicely. Now, when you get into nested functions, we have to look at the distinction between an if function and a nested function. Again, as you just saw, if functions provide either a true or false yes/no statement, but nested functions allow you to test multiple criteria and arguments against one another, increasing the possible outcomes. Unlike the if function, where you're only going to get yes or no, true or false, with nested functions there are multiple outcomes that can be used to assign a text string to a range of values. So let's see what we mean here. In this group of 4 patients who have hemoglobin A1Cs based upon what we've described as our model, well controlled is less than 7%. So the if function is if C86 is less than 7, it's well controlled. If C87 is less than 8, it's monitor the patient's comorbidity. If it's greater than 8.01 but less than 9, it's uncontrolled. So see that? Less than or equal to 8.99. And then if it's greater than or equal to 9.0, it's poorly controlled. And so you can see we've set up 4 different if statements. And now what we're going to do is nest those functions together. So let's come back over here to our diabetes column and our diabetes follow-up, and scroll up to this first element here. And in our first cell, we've included the nested formula: if D2, 4.31, is less than or equal to 7, we want to fill controlled. If D2 is less than or equal to 8, we want to monitor comorbidity. If D2 is less than or equal to 8.99, we want to label it uncontrolled. And if D2 is greater than or equal 9, we want to label it poorly controlled. And we close our statement with 4 parentheses, because within the nested function we have 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments. And so you can see with that very first argument, we've come up with well controlled, because the formula says if it's less than 7, it's well controlled. If we copy this and come down here to cell D6 and paste it, you can see how we're now returning the formula with monitor comorbidity, because it fits the description. It's greater than 7 but less than 8. And over here, if we come to cell D21 and paste that formula, it's poorly controlled because the hemoglobin A1C is greater than 9. So the nested function allows you to have multiple outcomes where we're assigning text string to fill in the range of values. Let's see what happens if we take this, grab our autofill handle, and go all the way to the bottom of our spreadsheet. And you can see now we have identified all of the patients in our cohort who are well controlled have comorbid states, who are uncontrolled and poorly controlled. This becomes very valuable for us if we want to start identifying those patients who need to return to our clinics for follow-up. Say the well-controlled, they can have an appointment every 6 months. Those with comorbid states, we may want to have them come in every month, and those who are poorly controlled, we may want to have those folks come in every 2 weeks. And so, with that, we have concluded this lesson on formulas and functions, averages, sums, if and nested functions. Be sure to look at the references and review the materials. We'll see you next time.